So, welcome to Niantic Community Church, where no matter who you are and no matter where you are on your life journey, you're welcome here. Welcome to our Resilience series. I've been so fortunate to speak with so many in our congregation about ways that they have bounced back from hard things in their life. And it's my special privilege and honor to talk with Peg Hertzberg today. She's one of the first people that I met when I made it here to Niantic. She was on the search committee, and I've asked her here today to talk about something that a lot of people are affected by, often later in life, but not always, and that is the death of a spouse. So, and I believe, Peg, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Ray has been gone now for 10 years. Is that right?
Just a little over 10 years. December 17th was 10 years.
Okay. And can you talk about the circumstances of his passing? He'd been ill for a while, is that right?
He had been ill for about 2.5 years, and he had cancer, and it didn't get any better. So we ended up having to go to the hospital every time we turned around, it seemed like. That's where he felt safe and comfortable. So that's what we did there. And we would spend the time and then get him back on his feet. Usually he was dehydrated, and then he'd come home. And each time he came home, he's a little bit weaker. And but he had a little riding cart that I had to learn how to put together. And we went wherever we wanted to go, and I'd take it out of the trunk and put it together, and he'd hop on, and away we'd go. So it wasn't all bad. Ray's thing, Ray's thing was to keep it light and to keep it. He said, if I'm sad, everybody around me is going to be sad, and if that happens, nobody's going to want to be around me. So the
Was
last
that
time he went into the
helpful?
hospital was the last time that he came out of the hospital.
I'm interested. I'm already deviating from my script, from the questions I was intending to ask you, but was it helpful? It's, and I ask this question because I think that I've noticed over the years that people approach their illnesses very differently. How is it helpful or not helpful for Ray to kind of maintain a cheerfulness or a lightness, as you said about his illness? Was that mostly helpful? Was that sometimes not helpful? How did that strike you as a spouse?
I think for Ray, it was extremely helpful because that was his nature.
Hmm.
He was a talker. And, especially if you talked about the Coast Guard, then he just took over and there was no getting him off of it. But he was quite a talker and he loved to joke around. And so it was crucial for him. And most of the time, it made it easier for me because it wasn't like we were pretending. It's like we were just going on as life as normal. And that's the way he wanted it.
And when he died in that December um, time frame, obviously that was right before Christmas, which is a hard time of year to lose people. I find after he died, what most surprised you about the grieving process or your moving into widowhood?
Well, what struck me almost minutes after he passed, I was looking out of the window at the hospital in the hospital, and everything was just going along as perfectly normal. And I remember thinking, but I'm not normal. This isn't normal. My kids, we were all there, all of us, all three of us, and this isn't normal. And when John Nelson came, I remember telling him, I said, look, everything is normal. And so I began to I began to wonder if that's not the way it's supposed to be. You know, we have to do the mourning and the grieving, but at some point we have to go back to what's our new normal becomes. And even at that point, you know, and then the other thing that struck me, Stephanie, was how much there was to do. We had taken care of a lot, but oh my goodness, there was so much to do. And so many people, always a lot of people around me, which I just loved. And I found that very, very helpful. And my brother in law, when he came, he stayed with me for about 5 weeks and helped me get through everything. And it wasn't until he left that I began to feel, whoa, this is different now. This is just me, and I don't have this person to take care of, but I have to take care of me. So
Well, I really resonate with the desire for for time to stop, right? Because I lost my mom, as you know, the day after Thanksgiving, and so grief was really new in the Christmas season. I can remember going to this grocery store and hearing the music, the Christmas music, that they play, and normally I would find that festive and fun, but it was such a kind of out of body, out of experience kind of
mm,
moment because it just was so discordant with the way that I felt. So I resonate with that too. And I'm glad you talked about that you had been a caregiver and suddenly the person that you were caring for, you know, had died. And so what did it look like to you? What most needed care in your life, your own care in your life after he died?
well, of course, you mentioned that there was Christmas, and we have these three beautiful grandchildren who now are having to go through all of this. And so then there was the funeral and the wake and the whole enchilada, you know, and then followed by Christmas. And so I think we let ourselves get mostly caught up in all of that. We did the wake and we did the funeral, and it was huge, and that was nice. And there was a cremation, so there was no cemetery. That happened in May. And so then we put our thoughts into Christmas. And my son and his wife decided we're going to do it in a different place this year. We're going to do it at our house, and so that was really nice. And Fred, my brother-in-law, had brought his Santa Claus suit. And if you would know him, he has this big white beard. And we had gotten Christine, my daughter-in-law, a bike so that the family could do bike riding for Christmas. And so Fred showed up riding down the street in a Santa Claus suit on Christine's new bike, ringing the bell, coming into the driveway at Kurt's house. And boy, that was nice. That was really, really nice. It just broke it up enough to know that, well, this is what it's going to be, and this is really, really neat. So it was pretty special Christmas that year. Yeah.
Well, a little bit of raised spirit too,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
right?
That's
Yeah.
exactly something he would have done. Yep. He always had a story, and he would have told stories galore about that.
Okay. Of course, you've been a member of Nyantick Community Church for a long time, and I wondered how your faith, because I know it is deep, and how your connection to your church community helped you through that time. And I also wanted to say that grief isn't a linear process. We know that. and that we can feel profound feelings of sadness 10 years after someone has passed and any number of years after someone has passed. So it's not a straight line of um, uh,
But
progression in the way that sometimes it gets painted, I think. But
every birthday and every Christmas, it feels like yesterday and it feels like forever ago. And it still happens today, to this day.
so how has your faith and your connection to your faith community, how has it helped you in your journey with this loss?
Well, faith is not a tangible thing. It's something that happens. It's again, it's not linear. Some days you go along and all of a sudden you realize, boom, there's faith staring you in the face. But without it, I don't know how anybody in this life can can go through each day without some kind of faith in something other than themselves. I realized through my faith that Ray was much better off where he is now than had he lived. He would have lived, it would have been just for us. And that wasn't good. So
Like you were talking about faith.
my faith, even though I stood after the day after Fred left, I was standing in my sunroom and it just hit me overwhelmingly. And I really got emotional. And then I felt across my back, something brushed across my back. And I turned around, it was like somebody had touched me. And there was nobody there, of course. In my mind and with my faith, I know who it was. And it made me realize, all right, I've got this. I'm not alone. I may live alone, but I'm not alone in life. And that was a big moment for me. And then each day seems to get seemed to get better. Um, Takes a long time for it to get better, um, but it does get better. You never get past the missing. You'll know that with your mom. Um, you never get past the missing, but you can go on and you develop a new life and you realize that you're no longer married. That was big. And then I thought, well, if I'm not married, maybe I could date. And so I did that for a while. And but I kept going back to my friends and my church. And that's where I found my new normal. Was where I was happiest, where I was most content, and where I could kind of center myself. That's important.
And so, Peg, based on your personal experience, what would you say to someone who has experienced or is experiencing the loss of a spouse or a loved one?
I was with Judy Tomanek when Godfrey passed, and there's really nothing you can say. There's no words. You just hug and you say, "I know." Um, and after a while, you say, we would just talk about them. It's so important to talk about them. A lot of people um, are uncomfortable talking about someone who had passed, and but I was just the opposite. It's crucial to talk about them. It's part of the healing. And so I encouraged Judy, she encouraged me, and anyone that I know who's lost someone, I do that. I ask questions about them. And they'll tell me if they don't want to talk about it. So I think that's really important is to, if you want to talk about your spouse, you need to talk about them. And trust that God will bring you through it. Lean on your family, lean on your friends. And you won't have to lean on somebody forever. Except God, of course. But I've made my way. I've done things in the house that Ray never would have done. He never, what do you want to go changing things around for? He did not like to change things. Took me 2.5 years to get him to move to Niantic. So.
You were working the long game, huh?
Yeah, right, for sure.
Peg, I want to thank you for your honesty and your gentleness in sharing this and sharing things about your experience. And I want to say to anyone who's watching this, we hope you benefit from this conversation. There are lots of resources in our particular community and just on the web for people who are grieving. And you might find that you need additional support for any aspect or facet of your experience. And that's okay. There's lots of help out there as we navigate the loss, especially I think in times of pandemic. We're kind of collectively going through a lot of loss right now. So it's a really important time to allow our loss to propel us forward and to allow our experiences to heal also. So I thank you, Peg, for what you've shared, and thank you once again.
Pleasure.